All right, could everybody come in, please? One at a time. Quiet, please. Come on in. Please stand along the yellow line. Yep, quiet, please. Face forward. Face forward, everybody. Yep, that's good. Thank you very much. All righty, be quiet. Now, do any of these people look like the criminal? Preparing to act in a television procedural show, such as a police drama or a medical series or a legal thriller, it requires a unique set of skills and methods due to their structured formats, recurring character arcs, and heavy reliance on technical dialogue. Today, we're going to give you a detailed analysis of practical methods actors can use to prepare effectively. So let's proceed with procedurals on this episode of Casting Actors Cast.
Casting Actors Cast, oh, what a show! With Jeffrey Dreisbach, we're ready to go. From agents to gigs, learn what you lack. Tune in every week, we're bringing you back.
We're going to kick off the show right after this. Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of Casting Actors Cast. I'm casting partner Jeffrey Dreisbach with the McCorkle Group in New York. Thank you for joining us on today's special episode about acting on procedurals. I've got some tips and some hints and some suggestions that I really hope are going to make a difference. If you have an opportunity to act in a television procedural, you're going to really appreciate today's episode. But first is that moment of the podcast where I get to say thank you for tuning into the podcast. We continue to grow these podcasts into the new year, and I couldn't be more excited. I'm not going to go into a long diatribe about, all the things that are promotional today, but I am going to ask that you go to the website, castingactorscast, all one word, .com. You're going to find all kinds of goodies there. There's a form that says dive into the talent pool, but there's also some classes. There's upcoming episodes that we're teasing. There's the blog called Jeff's Jots. There's my book called Jeff's Jots. It goes on and on and on. And so I invite you to just check out the website. By the way, I could really use your help. If you feel so inclined, please drop me a line, leave me a like, a share, a review, a thumbs up. Any of that stuff is really, really helpful to me. That's how I stay motivated, presenting and giving you the information on each of these podcasts, which I've been doing for over 350 episodes. So there it is. So do check that out. Feel free to give me a review. Oh, finally, if you are interested in submitting a self-tape for me to put on a potential future episode. Now, I've received a lot, so for those of you who've sent them in, hang in there. I've got a few episodes to put under my belt before I can get to those episodes, but I do want anyone who's interested in sending me one of your self-tape auditions. I will review it live on the air. Again, go to castingactorscast.com or castingactorscast@gmail.com if you want to submit. Now, here's a special announcement. I've been a film and television professor, adjunct professor at Norwalk Conservatory. The Conservatory of the Arts has been an accredited 2-year institution training program for actors. And I have to tell you that my second year TV film students will be heading to Los Angeles at the end of February for what I can only describe as a major career opportunity. They're going to be showcasing in front of top industry talent agencies and casting directors in Los Angeles. Now, this is an incredible chance for these really talented students to make connections and to take their careers to the next level. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is I need your help. To help cover the costs of travel and accommodations, they've set up a GoFundMe campaign to help defray these, pretty exorbitant costs to take an entire class to Los Angeles. So any contribution that you consider will go directly to supporting their trip and ensuring that they can take the most advantage of the opportunities that are going to be available to them. Now, the link to the GoFundMe page is on my website, castingactorscast.com. Castingactorscast, all one word.com. So if you have any questions or you want to chat more about the details, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And thank you so much for your support. it really does mean a lot to these young, talented students. All right, let's jump into the subject now, shall we? Yeah, let's. So, listen, procedurals. Now, we've described what procedurals are, right? You've seen them, the NCIS, the Law and Order, Dick Wolf Productions in general, those kinds of shows that are weekly adventures and weekly episodes with the same cast on a repeated basis. Sometimes it's really kind of an amazing genre. But you also understand that the acting is very, very specific. And it does require a certain additional layer of concentration and of a skill set that we're going to be talking about today. So I've got 6 steps that I think are going to be really useful to you in terms of really getting your head inside of these kinds of shows so that when the opportunity presents itself, you're going to be ready. So the first thing I want to share with you is to really, like I said a moment ago, is to understand the genre and its conventions. Now, in order to do that, it would be really smart for you to research the procedural format in general. How do you do that? Well, you got to study the show. You've got to watch those episodes to understand its tone, its pacing, and its overall style. You know that procedurals often balance character development with plot-driven storytelling. So if you can familiarize yourself with both of those aspects, you're going to be just much, much more confident and ahead of the game overall. Number 2, identify archetypes. I recognize common character types. Now, if you know me for any length of time, you know I hate the word typecasting. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about the archetypes that you see in these procedurals. For example, the seasoned detective, right? That conjures an image, right? That conjures an idea about that particular kind of character. Then, of course, there's the rookie cop. There's the no-nonsense lawyer. And if you can understand how they function within the show's framework, you're going to be in a much more confident place when those opportunities present themselves. Another suggestion is to analyze rhythms and pacing. You should know that procedurals often rely on quick and very, very precise dialogue exchanges and fast-paced scenes. So by paying attention to the timing and the flow, you are going to get a really good sense about how this character behaves, how the character you are asked to play behaves in that particular world. I also suggest that you learn about the subject matter. If you can dive into the show's world, for example, if it's let's just say it's a medical drama, and you can familiarize yourself with medical terminology. Now, listen, I have a quick story to tell you. Very, very long time ago, in the early 80s, I was at a soap opera called The Doctors. At that time, it was the longest running soap opera because it started from radio and then it came all the way into television. It was an NBC soap. That's where I met Alec Baldwin. He was a regular on the show, and I did many, many episodes with Alec. But there was one particular show I'll never forget where I was playing the part of an EMS person, somebody who had a gurney and somebody was suffering a very serious medical situation. Now, it just turns out that the person, sorry for laughing, but the person who was going to pass away in their final episode was an actor who had been on the soap opera for something like 20 years, started in radio. And this was his last day on the set. And so it was a scene with Alec Baldwin and myself, and then this actor who was their last day. So they obviously were in a very emotional place. I don't necessarily believe for a minute that they wanted to leave the show. I think that this was a gentle nudge for this person to retire. And so it was a very intense scene. And I got my script before the show, of course, a week in advance. And I'm looking at the script and I got one line in this particular episode. And my one line was looking up At Alec Baldwin's character, I had to say, I think it's a myocardial infarction. Yeah, it was actually the line that I had to say on the soap opera. And so, of course, I called my brother, who was a doctor, literally a doctor. And I said, okay, brother Craig, you got to help me out with this. What is this? And he kind of explained it to me, and I got the correct pronunciation. So I knew myocardial infarction. So now jump ahead to the day of the shoot. They didn't have time to rehearse it. And the director said, let's just go ahead and shoot it really quick because it was a one-line scene. And Alec is standing there over this body of this actor who was, pretending to be dead. And me on my knees overlooking the other character on the ground. And I look up at Alec and I said, I think it's a phyomyocognition. The director's yelling, cut! What's going on? How come you can't say that word right? And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please, can let's just take it again. It was my fault. It won't happen again. I'm so sorry. Okay, here we go. And action. I think it's a myofardical concoction. Cut. Okay. What do we, do we have to replace you for this one line? What's going on? No. I'm sorry. I've got it figured out. Sorry, Alex. Sorry, everybody. Okay, ready? And action. I think it's a heart attack. Cut. Wow. So that taught me a lot. I was so nervous on that first day on that soap opera, especially with like an actor like Alec Baldwin and Jim Pritchett, who was in his last day of this television show. I mean, it was a memorable moment to say the least. But that was my first entree into what it was to be in a procedural show. It happened to be a soap opera. So that happens to be the medical profession. So indulging yourself into learning as much as you can about that particular profession is really a good idea. So let's take it to another example for a police procedural. It's important that you study police protocols or even be familiar with legal jargon. Another suggestion in doing that is to consult real life professionals like I consulted with my brother. Shadowing a professional or even interviewing someone in the field can really give you a lot of insight into how real life counterparts think, behave, and communicate. All right, here's the second tip that I'm going to give you about proceeding with procedurals, and that is break down and memorize the script efficiently. In other words, the language that's written in these shows is very precise and very succinct. So mastering technical dialogue is your best defense when working on these kinds of shows. And a way to do that is to simply focus on the accuracy of each of your lines. See, procedural scripts often include very complex jargon or terminology that you might not be comfortable or familiar with. Mispronunciations can undermine credibility a lot. So make sure that you're rehearsed until you're really comfortable and confident. Another tip is to understand the meaning. Learn what these terms mean, even if it's not necessary for your character. Having that greater understanding will also build some confidence. It gives your delivery some depth. Here's another tip. Use mnemonic devices. Create associations or visual images to help remember challenging dialogue. Prioritize scene objectives. Know your character's goal. See, procedurals are very plot-driven, so understand your role in the moving of the story and moving that story forward, for example, by providing the evidence or delivering an emotional reveal. Being comfortable in that structured format is a very, very good suggestion. We're going to continue the conversation right after this. Here's another tip. I suggest you analyze some subtext. While procedural dialogue can seem very straightforward, subtext often drives the emotional undertones of a particular scene. All right, let's move on from there. This is number 3. And I think this is a hint that is going to help in terms of long-term work in a procedural. Perhaps you have an arc of more than 2 episodes. Develop a character for long-term balance, archetype, and nuance. Think in larger terms other than just the individual episode. I know this to be true many, many times. Actors who start with just 1 episode as a day player oftentimes will be brought back many times over. So all of those very interesting little details that you bring to that character will be something that gets remembered. Because procedurals often use established character types, but then they add depth through the backstory or the character's mannerisms or personal quirks, whatever it is. Additionally, in that kind of a situation, it's valuable to layer in humanity. In other words, find moments to show vulnerability, humor, or individuality, even within the constraints of a highly structured script. That humanized quality that you bring to the character is going to be very much welcome because of your unique take on how to play the part. Another suggestion is to maintain continuity. Understand that you need to track the character's evolution. For example, if you're a recurring or a regular cast member, it's important to keep notes on your character's journey, your character's relationships, and any emotional or physical shifts that your character goes through. And it's also important to be consistent with your mannerisms. Small, consistent physical or vocal choices can help establish your character across many, many episodes. And you'll be very much rewarded for that consistency. Number 4, develop physicality and movement. Match the role's demands with who you are in your character. Here's a way to do that. Simply study body language. Different professions have different physical traits. Like, for example, doctors just might exhibit a kind of a confidence and an air of efficiency in their movements, while detectives might display alertness and authority, but they also are potentially quite vulnerable and perhaps make mistakes. They're human, after all. Lawyers, for example, often exude composure, and they're very precise with the way they present themselves. Here's another suggestion, is to rehearse tasks. Practice procedural tasks like examining evidence, suturing a wound, or presenting a legal argument to ensure authenticity. What does that look like for you? What does that feel like for your character? Another thought is to adapt to blocking on the set. It's important to anticipate multi-camera setups. When you have multi-camera setups, procedurals will use them quite efficiently with their various camera techniques. Now, be really mindful of your angles, your marks, and your proximity to the other characters or the props. That can be really valuable for you in terms of being spatially aware of the environment that you are recording in. Here's another tip. It's important that you work with the props. Be familiar with tools like the stethoscope or firearms. Now, a little side note about firearms. No one is going to give you a firearm without the awareness and understanding that this is a blank gun that shoots blanks. Also, many times there are periods of training so that you are comfortable enough and safe enough to be able to use a firearm. But being familiar with your props is what we're going for in terms of my suggestion. You might even be asked to handle legal documents. You know, documents that are legal documents might be handled slightly differently, especially in character on a set in a courtroom. So think about that. I would suggest practice using them easily, make them fluid. Just simply avoid looking awkward or unnatural with your props. Now, let's move on from there. Number 5, I think it's important to engage emotionally within the procedural framework. In other words, find emotional truth. And the way that you can do that is root your character in realism. You see, procedurals demand a blend of technical precision and emotional depth simultaneously. So make sure your reactions in a scene, for example, feel authentic, even if it's expositional dialogue, even if it doesn't seem that it's that important for your character. Be really clean and clear with your approach to the work. Another tip is ground heightening moments, dramatic reveals when there are life or death decisions or there are major confrontations. Those are very, very common in these kinds of shows. So avoid melodrama by focusing on the character's internal stakes. It's important to balance emotional investment. How you do that? How do you balance the emotional investment when you're in a procedural? Well, here's a tip. Stay focused on the case. Procedural characters often suppress personal emotions to stay professional. So do that. Practice delivering lines with restraint, showing emotions very subtly when appropriate. Don't necessarily make an emotional choice out of all of your dialogue. It's very much not that. Another tip is to develop a backstory for recurring roles. Use moments of downtime in the script to hint at your character's personal life or your character's inner world. But that adds dimension, you see? And so that can give you also a great grounding foundation when you have some of those heightened emotional scenes. Let's move on from there. Number 6, build a collaborative mindset. Work with the ensemble. Know your role within the team of other cast members. Procedurals are ensemble driven, so understand how your character contributes to the group dynamic. That's very critical and can really help you feel that level of confidence, especially if you get along, working, playing well with others. Here's another tip. Practice quick adjustments. Yeah. Directors will many times require very fast changes or changing of tone or your delivery on the set, on the fly. So stay flexible. And honestly, if you stay open to feedback, you're going to find yourself in a much better place. Respect guest roles. As a guest actor, focus on fitting seamlessly into the established world of the show while making your character memorable. That's a great tip. And then if you are a regular on a show, do this. Help guest actors feel comfortable and guide them through the tone and expectations of the show. That gets remembered for a long time. Plus, it'll help you feel better about the work that you're doing. Moving on from there, number 7, be ready for fast turnaround. Practice cold reads. Prepare for last-minute changes. You know what? Procedurals often require quick script revisions. So if you can hone your ability to adjust to new material on short notice, you will be very well off. Stay adaptable on the set. Learn to interpret decision and direction and apply it without overthinking. It's when we overthink some of those choices that we find ourselves getting stuck into a rut. So if you can prioritize rest and resilience and quick thinking, that will absolutely be a welcomed quality to show on the set. Now let's move on from there. This is another tip. I think this tip is really worth spending a moment on, and that is maintain stamina. Long shooting days are very common in procedurals. Take care of your physical and your mental health to stay sharp. Be mentally agile. Rehearse in ways that allow you to adjust emotional intensity or line delivery rapidly. That's a lot, right? I think that there's value in taking on these kinds of opportunities and see them as really great opportunities to grow your acting technique. Because acting in a procedural show, it requires precision, adaptability, and a blend of technical and emotional skills. And so by preparing thoroughly with these methods, you can deliver performances that feel authentic, that feel compelling and in sync with the unique demands of this amazing genre. So listen, I hope that this has been helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Casting Actors Cast. Thanks so much.
It's been great having you in our talent pool today. Your support means the world to us, so please consider sharing, liking, and reviewing this episode wherever you jump in. I'm Megan Grace Martinez. Thanks.
From monologues